High school affair turns into his worst nightmare. TLDR at bottom. This happened to my best friend, not me, but I had a huge part to play in the story, so I don't know all the details. Also sorry for poor formatting, I'm on mobile. It all started when my best friend had met a guy online about 10 years ago when we were in 10th grade. He was a bodybuilder, and it was love at first sight. For her anyway. I met this dude about a week after they were a thing. They admitted feels for each other and all was well. May I mention, this guy was ripped in 10th grade. I'm 5'7" and this dude by my approximation was about a foot taller than I'm now. Me being a guy that's straight AF, and I could see why my friend liked him. He had everything you could possibly ask for. They were flirting, and I had a feeling he wasn't the best guy for her because she was drooling over his looks and not his personality. 2 weeks later I saw my friend again. She had been to the hospital over the week before, over depression. I remember this exact discussion because of how much shock I was in. Saturday night, 2 weeks before they had done the dirty deeds. My friend had lost her virginity to this man that night. Then before her parents got home he left, never to be heard from again. She had been blocked on all social media and phone numbers. A mention of her name to this dude and you were automatically blocked. My friend attempted Saturday night after the blockage and again Sunday morning when she was caught by her mom and admitted to emergency that day. I'm glad to say my friend got over him pretty quickly. I set her up with my best friend from grade school and they fell quickly for each other. Everything was normal again. For about 10 years, where I heard of this man again from one of my bodybuilder friends who happened to work for him. He had been happily married to a rich lady for about 2 years. More on that later. He also owned the major gym in our city and was rolling in cash after buying out all of the local competitors in our city. Money that he took from his rich wife that didn't really care about money. I was able to get his Snapchat from one of his friends and send it to my friend from high school, who was getting married that fall to my best friend from grade school. She wanted some revenge, and I'd help her with that. We set up a fake Snapchat account of a girl with a fake name, and then added him. It was time for our revenge. He fell to the catfish quite quickly. He took about a month to start flirting, and after that it was easy to get him to send nudes and be all dirty flirty with us. We waited about 3 months gathering screenshots to prove that he was cheating, and then copied it all to a few USBs, then put them in envelopes with thank you cards inside with his wife's name on the envelopes. We still needed one last thing though. His address. We needed his address to drop a card into his mailbox. We found his address through the bodybuilder friend mentioned earlier. He lived in a mansion that happened to be lakefront property and had 2 cars parked outside, a then brand new Ford GT, then a Dodge Charger. I put the card in his mailbox, then drove off to work. After work on the way home I made a quick detour to go to his house, and his wife was throwing his shit out the front door on my way by. I couldn't help but laugh. Needless to say, I heard what happened through my bodybuilder friend. She was furious and divorced him almost immediately. The gym ended up closing about a month later, and then he filed for bankruptcy. Apparently he ended up avoiding his taxes later and is currently serving time for that. Needless to say, my motto is, don't do something if you're not willing to pay the consequences. TLDR, high school kid smashes then leaves my friend, so I catfish him out to his marriage.
I'm not just gonna sit here as you assault my injured friend. TLDR at bottom. On mobile, so sorry and pardon my grammar, I are stupid. So some info. I have lived in a heavily wooded New England town, so naturally me and my friends play games deep in the woods. One of these days me and a group of friends were having an airsoft war in the local woods, in a part where few people regularly go as not to cause too much trouble with our screaming. While we were running around having a grand old time, my best friend, who shall henceforth be known as M, fell down into a gulch and sprained her ankle. She wasn't hurt that badly but had a hard time standing. So me being a good friend and offered up as tribute was the one to carry her back the half-mile trek to the parking lot while my other friends packed up and tried to figure out what to do. As we trek back, Em and I talk about random things for about 10 minutes, until we hear a woman shriek at us from a good 50 feet away. Enter CB, Crazy Bitch, and PK, Poor Kid. This woman in her mid-30s approached us at what seemed like light speed with a little 5-year-old as she was freaking out. She was calling me and Em all sorts of crude things, just underswearing due to her child in tow. She claimed we were up to incredibly sinful and indecent things cause I was carrying my injured friend. Now normally I just ignore crazy or stupid, cause I deal with it every day, so I did what I normally do. I started walking away without acknowledging her, partially cause I was annoyed and partially cause she was tall and intimidating. Bad move. She shrieks at me for ignoring an elder and demands that Em gets off my back. Em tries to explain that her ankle is twisted and that I am just carrying to her car, while I am just standing there awkwardly staring at her kid. Now CB was past the point of reason and told us to stop making stupid excuses. Then she grabbed Em by the wrist and threw her off my back. She landed on her injured foot and sat down shouting in pain, calling her a bitch, and began to cry. This pissed her off more and she proceeded to discipline my friend by slapping her and saying some bullshit about how rude and indecent we were. Now I am not proud of my actions past this point. That is why I am on a throwaway account. I don't look it, me being a skinny guy and average height with a baby face, but I have bad anger issues. There was this one kid that bullied me and broke one of my favorite mechanical pencils, so I stabbed him in his palm with it. Now I am no real fighter, but I was on track and in martial arts for a while, so needless to say I have very strong legs. So the moment this woman started a tirade on me, I immediately kicked her in her crotch. She doubled over as her kid began to cry and then I kneed her in her face. She was stunned and began to tear up. But I was still pissed, so I stomped on her hand and she shrieked the loudest cry in pain I have ever heard. I was still angry as fuck and could have beat the shit out of the poor woman, but I wanted to get him out of there as quick as possible. So I yelled at her to hop on, and once she was, I bolted. I ran all the way back to the lot where we both just sat in her car in silence as we waited for the others to get back so we could leave. And well, that was it. We did not say a word about it and just kept living on as if it never happened. I don't know what happened to that woman and the story of that night didn't get around. So in short, no one knew. And that was that. I feel horrible for what I did, but not because I hurt that lady, but because I did all that in front of her son. There are dozens of ways I could have handled it better, but if she was alone, that woman deserved hell. She was willing to harass and assault 2 teens in the forest cause she was upset at something that didn't happen. I don't think there is a real moral to this. I just feel really fucked up, as I probably should. TLDR, a woman threw my injured friend to the ground then slapped her. I beat the shit out of her and no one ever knew about it. Angry Mum's tirade backfires. Literally, cross-post. Some side notes before we begin. This is a cross-post between r/NuclearRevenge and r/ProRevenge. Some people at r/ProRevenge decided that this was brutal enough to be posted here and suggested it. So thanks to those people. Other than that, I've left the story unedited and pure. Enjoy. Hello Reddit. My friends are pretty invested in you and this subreddit, and after hearing about it I decided this story was worth creating an account for. This is my first post ever, so I'm sorry if I violated any unspoken Reddit rule or anything like that. I know people will say this is fake because of the new account, but I promise it's all true, down to every detail. So over the summer, around 7 to 8 months ago, my family decided to take a vacation to Pennsylvania. We live in California, for a week to visit some relatives. We end up meeting up with our twice removed cousins, who are around my age, 14 to 15. Yes, I'm a minor. I don't bite. We have never even seen each other before, so to break the ice a little we drive to a quarry that filled up with water. The lake had a nice little water park on it, with inflatables chained in place that you would swim out to. Some attractions included slides, obstacle courses, and the Big Kahuna inflatable. The Big Kahuna, aka the Fat Boy, is a giant peanut-shaped inflatable where one person sits on the end while another jumps on the opposite end to launch the first person up into the air and down into the water. This being the main attraction, we decided to go try out the Big Kahuna first. Some semi-important side notes: it was kind of packed that day, and when they handed out life vests before you go out in the water, they began to run a little low. I ended up wearing a small and basically inadequate life vest meant for 8-year-olds, even though I was 13 at the time. It was the biggest size they had though that wouldn't swallow me whole. Moving on. We swim over to the line for the Big Kahuna. The queuing system was a line of inflatable poles that people would lean against as they waited to get to the stairs. We got in line behind a lovely family of some kid about 8 or 9 and what I assume is his mom. I banter some with my cousins as we wait, and since I'm floating the waves naturally push me around some. This direction just so happens to be towards these angels, who will now be referred as Red-Haired Lady, Mom, and Brat, Kid. I accidentally bump my back into the lady and I apologize and paddle back a foot or two. In the line we are packed tighter than sardines, keep that in mind. She glares at me with a burning hate, which frankly catches me off guard. She huffs loudly at me and says, "Well, aren't you going to say sorry?" I did, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bump into you. Well, back up. Me, swims an inch or two back as far as I can, against the inflatable. Fucking move more, you're literally choking me to death. I'm back as far as I can, sorry. Don't apologize. Back up. At this point I'm so squished up against the inflatable I'm almost under it. And mind you, these aren't pool noodles. These are huge things that are surprisingly heavy. About the length of a semi. I then accidentally brush my leg on her leg, her ankle even. Lady starts hyperventilating. Did you just attempt to sexually harass me, young man? Me, slowly and cautiously. No, don't do that ever again. Sinners like you will go to prison and hell alike. It was an accident. I swear I didn't mean to do anything. So you aren't sorry? What? Rape. Help. Rape. Rapist. Everyone around us, including my cousins and I. WTF. It's obvious to pretty much everyone that this lady is crazy, and they all saw her overreact and snap at me, so nobody really did anything. A short while later, me, slowly drifts over without realizing it. Brat detects enemy. Brat swims over. Brat whines. You know this is our spot, right? Yeah man, don't worry about it. Well then move. Me, moves. Move. Me, frantically doggy paddles my way over because of my garbage life vest. Brat I guess gets stung with my shit. Brat dead as stunks my head underwater and holds it there. I was caught by surprise and my lungs invited some water over for dinner. As I struggle I pop up and shove the kid off me. The mom, smugly watching the whole thing unfold, turns from being a spectator to an ass. She slaps me hard as hell across the face and screams at me, "Don't ever touch my son again." The brat starts crying saying how I hurt him and hugs his mom. At this moment, coughing up water, I began to plan, and oh what a plan it was. When we got to the stairs, there was a sign in how to properly and safely jump on the Big Kahuna. The best way I can describe it is putting your legs out in front of you straight, folding your arms across your chest, and almost sitting in midair, but with your legs straight. So the lady goes up and Brat jumps fine on the cushion and crawls over to the other side. His mum, being the insane person she is scared to jump 10 feet down to the cushion. For 5 minutes she sat up there breathing slowly and looking down in fear. It got so bad that people even starting cheering her to go, then booing as she just stood there. I had an idea and pulled her aside. I said, to make it up to you for being so rude to you, I said with my best happy-go-lucky smile, I'll give you a little tip. What helps me is that I put my arms on my knees and my legs straight down when I jump. It helps break my fall. She nods and, being the idiot she is and not reading the signs, does exactly what I told her to do. What follows was so satisfying words cannot describe it. She jumps down, and the moment she hits that bag in that position, her whole spine and body just whip up and back like a whip, and I hear this loud crack. Her kid flies off the other end and does the crispiest belly flop I've ever seen, while his mom hits her neck on a rebound on the bag again. After she hits her neck in the second bounce, she belly flops in the water too. And she just lies there floating. Her kid ends having to literally drag her across the water and lay her on the beach. She doesn't move her back or neck. She just stays there moaning in pain from the brutal punishment and force of that jump. She ended up fracturing something or other in her back, and I didn't get mentioned at all or got any blame. They just said that it was her fault for not following the safety directions, and even when she threatened to sue, apparently the owners kept their calm and coolly explained that she signed a waiver and blah blah blah. It was legally airtight, and she ended up with a broken back essentially. Best day of my life, hands down.
You act better than me and annoy me. I fuck your grades. So a bit of background. I'm a college student who builds, fixes, and upgrades computers for extra money from my dorm. I can make up to 3k a week. You may have seen my story on r/entitled parents. It was removed, sadly. So this happened yesterday. Taking some ideas from the comments on my other post, I now have 3 computers that I will give to assholes. They are shitty in every way, and I went out of my way to fill them with so many viruses. Now, on one, I put in a kill switch that will erase the entire computer. I have a coding friend from high school. I contacted him again. He saw my last post and was actually the one to suggest this. So he made me the program for much less than what he would normally charge. He actually offered it for free, but he makes much less than I do, and he has always been a great guy. So on to the story. ED is entitled Digbag. Me is me. DF is dorm friend, who I had known since high school. He is going into sports medicine, and he is pretty fit, and a tall and big guy. I'm a skinny average guy who sits in front of a computer, or at a desk all day. So DF needed an upgrade to his computer. His HDD was bottlenecking his PC, and I was replacing it with a better 1TB SSD. I also did this for free, since he pays most, 65%, of the rent, and we haven't reworked how much we are each paying. I was working on it in my room, when bang bang bang. It sounds like someone is hitting my door with a hammer. I get up. After hiding my valuable/computers, I now do this every time someone comes in, open it, and I immediately recognize him. He lives directly above us, and constantly throws loud parties. We have reported him several times, but his brother works in the reporting and security office, so nothing ever happens. It turns out that his computer broke in his last party, which was the day before he came down, and he needs a new one. I bring out some of my slightly below average ones, while planning to make him pay full price, and this follows. So which one would be best for drawing and art programs, since I'm an art major? That one. Points to middle. It will be $850. Note, I don't know shit about art on computers, so I picked a random one. I don't like the looks of that one. Also, that is way too much. How about $300? Hell no. The Nvidia graphics card alone is worth more than that. Well, can you custom build me one? These all look shitty. Look, I don't have time. I'm working on DF's computer. At this moment I remembered my computers. I don't give a flying fuck about your boyfriend's computer. Make me a computer. First of all, I'm not gay. And how much will you pay me? Come on, man. I will invite you to all of my awesome parties. I'm a nerd, and I have noise sensitivities, so I rarely go to parties, since I don't enjoy them. I subtly hinted at him turning down the volume on his parties. I will hook you up. I have a girlfriend. Pay with money, or no computer. Fine. $350 for you to build me a computer. I normally charge about $900 to $2,000 for a good computer build. Sure. What case do you want? I go to the closet and get out some of my laptop cases. He picks out a relatively cheap one. Roughly $30 to $50. Alright, come by in 2 days. Okay, bye. So if you haven't figured out what I'm going to do, then listen here. I'm going to give him the computer that has the kill switch to erase his PC, just in the case he picked. Art majors have to turn in a profile at the end of the year for finals, worth 35% of the grade. So 2 days before finals in May, I'm going to erase his computer with the remote kill switch. He is picking the computer up later today, since I finished early and left a note on his door.
I wanted to post this story to r/pro-revenge, but they have rule for illegal activity, so apologize for bad English. Disclaimer: this story is not about me. My father told me the story. I live in a developing country. The story takes place in early 2000s, when my country was still recovering from a financial crisis. As a result, the law was pretty lax and the crime was rampant. So, one time a cadet was coming back from his hometown to his assigned military base, which was where my parents, who are serving, and I lived. The base has housings for officers. He arrived to the bus station at almost midnight. The station is quite far from the base, almost 10 kilometers, but since bus stations at the time were ridden by hoodlums, no taxi would dare to operate near the station past evening, so he had to walk to the base. Apparently, some thugs mistook him for an easy prey. After walking away from the station, he was jumped by 4 people. Being a military person in training, he gave them some fight, but was ultimately overwhelmed. They beat him up pretty bad, took his belongings and left him lying on the side of the road. The road was totally empty, so no one can help him. He was out until morning, when someone driving finally passed by, spotted him and took him to the hospital. As soon as the base got the reports of one cadet being beaten, which was just a few hours after he was taken to the hospital, the news spread. Everyone is fuming with rage. Later that day, only suffered minor head injuries. He got out of the hospital. The same day at almost midnight, the entire platoon of hot-blooded, physically trained, revenge-seeker cadets were mobilized to the bus station. After they got there, it was basically a massacre. Every living being who had tattoo, drunk, wore leathers, or even barely resembled thugs were beaten to a pulp. They wanted to find those 4 who jumped the cadet yesterday. Only, the method was beat to a bloody mess first, ask later. They kept beating these people, only stopped when the target stopped moving completely. My father's junior, who was one of cadets, said that one of the guy's face was so badly beaten, it was essentially unrecognizable as face anymore. He even confessed that they went a bit too far there. Finally, one of the beaten guys, who is one of those 4, gave away the information of the remaining 3. Turns out, those 3 were not at the station at the time. Instead, they went drinking at some other place. The platoon then left the bus station, looking for the remaining 3. They found them drinking, and instead of being beaten, they were forcefully brought back to base. At the base, they were not beaten. Instead, they were forced to bathe in a pond used for training. The twist is they had to use heavy-duty detergent, normally used to clean boots, as soap. After several hours and the sun began to rise, they finally emptied a sack of detergent. Their skin after the bathing was described as bright red. Then they were tied to the outdoor pull-up poles until evening. No crime is heard from that bus station ever again.